Hi, my name is Lavinia. This is Peter. Welcome to Games Made Easy, a channel to learn board games quickly and easily. Today, I'm very happy to teach you and give you tips on how to play the Advanced Rules of Dune, which make the game even more competitive. Now, for the rules of the basic game, have a look at my other video. I really like playing Dune with 5 or 6 players when all the factions, or most of the factions, are in play. And these advanced rules make each faction even more different from one another, which is really cool. Note that you can't pick and choose these rules. You either play with the basic game or you play with all the advanced rules. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the video description. I will start by explaining the advanced rules that affect all factions, and then I'm going to explain the advanced rules for each faction. In a nutshell, there's going to be a lot more spice flowing than in the basic game. There's also going to be less combat because it's more expensive and more dangerous. Now, let's start by looking at the spice flow and Nexus phase. Now, during this phase, we draw 2 spice cards instead of just 1, and as a result have 2 separate piles of discard cards, A and B. Draw the first card. If it's a territory, place spice on it as normal. Discard the card on one pile and draw a second card. If it's another territory, discard it on the second discard pile and place the spice on it. When you draw a Shai Hulud, send all the forces and spice to the Tleilaktu tanks that are on the territory of the card on top of its respective pile. If you draw another Shai Hulud, discard it immediately until you draw a territory card. Then a Nexus appears. There can only be 1 Nexus per spice blow and Nexus phase, and it is resolved like in the basic game. In addition to more spice blows, we also get more spice from the spice collection phase, as now some territories provide spice. In addition to standard spice collection, each occupant of Carthag or Arrakeen collects 2 spice, and the occupant of Tuek Siege collects 1 spice. If a faction occupies more than 1 location, they collect a spice for each. Now let's look at the advanced combat rules, where in essence all the forces are now worth half of what they were worth in the basic game, unless they are supported with spice. Forces committed to a battle are only worth half the value unless 1 spice is spent to support it. So here, these 4 forces are only worth a battle value of 2, but if you add 1 spice here, it's now worth 2.5. To mark this on the battle wheel, simply stop halfway between the numbers. So this would be 2.5, add one more spice, and it brings it to 3. Do not put the spice directly in the spice bank. Keep it on the battle wheel until the resolution of the battle. If a traitor is revealed, the winner does not spend the committed spice. Otherwise, win or lose, all the spice goes back to the bank. I'll explain later on that some factions have special forces that are worth 2. Now in this case, when the winner of the battle takes losses, he can choose how to split the committed forces. For example, the Emperor committed 1 spice for a total force of 3. He has 5 ordinary forces and 1 special force called the Sardaukar, and that is worth 2. He can therefore choose to spend 5 ordinary forces, one of which has the spice, or only 2 ordinary if the spice is used by the Sardaukar. Both fulfill the Emperor's player commitment of spice and battle strength. There are more changes that are specific to each faction. Now, some are quite simple, others are a lot more varied than in the basic game. All factions, except the Bene Gesserit, also add a special power to the Karama cards. This is a once per game advantage. Let's have a look at the one from the Prescient Atreides. Their Karama card allows the Atreides to look at any one player's entire battle plan instead of only one element. The Atreides also have the Kwisatz Haderach. The card starts with a marker at 0 and at first is inactive. For each force lost, move the counter by 1. When it reaches 7, the Kwisatz Haderach is active for the rest of the game. It cannot replace a leader on its own, but adds +2 to leaders or chief leader in 1 territory per turn. If that leader gets killed, the Kwisatz Haderach has no effect. Another advantage is that the leaders it accompanies cannot turn traitor. Finally, it can only be killed by the lasgun shield explosion. If that happens, it's sent to the Tleilaktu tanks and can be revived like any other Atreides leader. And then we have the treacherous Harkonnen, who now, when they win a battle, can choose randomly a leader from the loser supply. They can then either place it face down in the Tleilaxu tanks for 2 spice, or keep that leader so they can use it once in battle. If it doesn't die or claimed as a traitor in that battle, that leader must be returned to its faction. Note that if all the Harkonnen leaders get killed, all the captured leaders are immediately returned to their factions. Finally, their Karama power allows the Harkonnen to take any number of treachery cards up to the entire hand of any one player. You must swap each card you take with one of the cards in your hand. Then the wealthy Emperor and its 5 special forces, the Sardaukar. 5 Sardaukar which are worth 1 strength without spice or 2 strength with spice against all factions except the Fremen. Against the Fremen, they are like standard forces and only count 1 even with spice. Note that only 1 Sardaukar force can be revived per turn. Finally, the Emperor's Karama power allows him to revive up to 3 forces or 1 leader for free. And then we have the native of Dune, the Fremen, who can now control the storm by randomly drawing from the storm deck. Just after the storm is moved in round 1, the Fremen secretly draws a storm card, looks at it and places it near the board. In subsequent rounds, instead of using the wheels, the card is revealed to move the storm counterclockwise. The deck is reshuffled, and a new card is drawn secretly on and on and on. Also, during the Spice Blow phase, if you draw 1 Shai Hulud for pile A, and then flipped 1 more for pile B, the Fremen can select any sand territory to place the Sandworm token. All non-Fremen forces there are destroyed. You do that for any additional Shai Hulud you draw that turn. Another advantage for the Fremen is that if their forces are caught in the storm, only half are lost, rounded up. Also, like the Emperor, the Fremen have special forces, 3 Fedaykin. They're also worth 2 normal force each, and also only 1 can be revived per turn. However, a big difference between the Fremen and any other faction is that their forces do not require spice to get their full strength. Finally, their Karama power allows them to place a Sandworm token in any sand territory they wish, and it will be treated as a normal Sandworm. Then we have the manipulative Bene Gesserit, whose advisors are quite different in the advanced game. At the beginning of the game, if the Fremen are playing, you can place 1 advisor in a territory of your choice. If the advisor is alone in that territory, flip it to a fighter. Also, like in the basic game, the Bene Gesserit ships an advisor every time a faction ships forces to Dune from off-planet. The difference is that instead of placing that advisor in the polar sink, it goes where the other factions have just shipped. Advisors coexist peacefully with other forces. They cannot battle, collect spice, prevent a faction from taking control of a stronghold, use ornithopters, or play family atomics. However, they are still susceptible to storms, to sandworms, to lasgun and shield explosions, and family atomics. But the great thing about advisors is that you can flip all or any of them to fighters anytime during the Chom Charity, bidding, or revival phase and announce you want to battle. Note that when the Bene Gesserit ships or moves forces into an unoccupied territory, they must be fighters. If another faction enters a territory where you have fighters, you can flip them to advisors. Another perk of the Bene Gesserit is that during the Chom Charity phase, they always collect 2 spice, even if they have more than 2 already. Finally, the Bene Gesserit don't gain a once per game unique Karama power. Instead, they can use any worthless card as if it was a Karama card. And finally, we have the awesome Spacing Guild, who can now pick their turn during the ship and move phase. They simply have to announce when they want to play. All other factions must stay in the same order. Finally, they can use their Karama power to stop one off-planet shipment of any one player during the game. Finally, let's talk about alliances. At the beginning of the game, you can choose to agree to change the number of players per alliances or the number of strongholds required to win the game with your allies. In the standard game, 2 players per alliance need to hold 4 strongholds together to win the game. You can change this to 3 strongholds to make the game shorter. You can also allow 3 players per alliance and 3 strongholds to make it even shorter. If, however, you allow 3 players per alliance but still keep to 4 strongholds, it will be an average length game. If you keep the number of players variable, the rules recommend you keep 3 strongholds to win, but it's really up to you to decide at the beginning of the game what you prefer. My tips to win at Advanced Dune are: the advanced rules are not that complicated, but it's a bit difficult at the beginning to learn all the differences between all the factions, so I recommend you start with the basic game and then progress to the advanced rules, because it will make for a more enjoyable game. The game is more balanced with the advanced rules. The Atreides and Harkonnen are not as powerful as in the basic game. You'll need to readjust how you play each faction in this new economy. Non-allies can have secret communication. Any player can share any information with any other player at any time. This information can be shared publicly or privately. A well-timed Karama power can mean victory. Choose carefully the right battle for the Atreides, or for the Harkonnen the hand swap, as this can mean a game-winning move. With less players per alliance, look for synergies between factions. With more players, you can look for more creative solutions to winning the game. Be really careful with the battles you pick when you play the Harkonnen. Losing battles can greatly reduce your source of spice and therefore your access to treachery cards. So that's how you play the full rules of Dune. Each faction gets their full power and what makes them special. Although there's more spice, the battles are even more brutal than in the basic game. It's well worth learning at this level. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. And if there's a game you'd like me to teach, leave it in the comments. I'll make more games easy soon. Bye now.